Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming out. Welcome to the May 2nd, 2024 City Planning Commission meeting. We do have a quorum. I'll take roll. Lanterman here. Brummond.
Here.
Hargreaves.
Here.
Kazicki.
Here.
Lind.
Here.
All present. Please rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So before we begin, I just want to thank everyone for coming out. It's nice to see this level of participation, so thank you. We appreciate it. You know, we're volunteers here, and we listen to what it is you tell us. So I do appreciate the time that everyone has taken out of their busy schedules to come here tonight, so thank you. Commissioners and staff, are there any amendments or other changes to tonight's agenda?
Mr. Chair, there's no amendments to the agenda. Staff does note there was a bit of a mix-up. The agenda, for some reason, had April 4th when we do indeed mean today, May 2nd. And the minutes had May 2nd when those are for the April 4th meeting. So those corrections will be made. Just wanted to call those out.
Thank you. I thought it was me. Any amendments from commissioners? No? Could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. I'd like to open the floor to you to address the Planning Commission on any item that is not already on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone here who'd like to address us on anything that is not already on the agenda? Bueller? Anyone? Okay, thank you. Let's see.
Pardon me, Chair, I think we have to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Yeah, that's the next item on the list.
Sorry.
Can I get a motion to approve the April 4th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting minutes?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Let's see. Oh, yes, I did skip ahead to public comment.
You know what, actually, Chair, we were just chuckling because it's listed in a different order on the enhanced agenda than the regular agenda. So they just aren't matching. So it wasn't you. You were just looking at a different agenda than I was.
Well, I'm not so sure that it's not me, but thank you. You're very kind. So with that, I'd like to open the public hearing for, Natalie, what is the number on this?
So 6A.
I'm sorry?
6A for Heather Meadows, 3rd edition.
Okay. So I'd like to open the public hearing, Heather Meadows, 3rd edition. This is City File number 24-002. Natalie?
So I will start with the staff report, Mr. Chair. And you already gave a great summary of the application, so we'll move on to the next slide. This first application for Heather Meadows 3rd edition is proposed by Mark and Marcus Lee of ML Unlimited. It is an open space and preservation preliminary plat. There are a special set of rules that apply to something that we call OSMP. And it's on 88.22 acres, and it's near Oakdale Drive and Heather Lane. The proposal includes 12 buildable lots for single-family homes, and then we'll be putting 2 open space outlots in a temporary conservation easement totaling 44.8 acres, and the subdivider will continue farming those outlots. The application also includes a conditional use permit request This will allow for agricultural buildings exceeding the by right footprint on a lot less than 10 acres. And then it includes 3 variances. One for lots that must front an internal paved street, which is an OS&P requirement. But there are 2 lots that are existing today that would remain and they front Oakdale Drive. There's also a OS&P requirement for a 100-foot buffer yard that's planted on the perimeter of the site where it abuts an existing public street. And again, there's existing structures along Oakdale Drive where that would create a conflict. And then a 100-foot setback is required for agricultural structures, and there is 1 structure on the farmstead lot that would become 91 feet away from the front lot line with the new right-of-way required. So for some context, the plat consists of 3 existing properties. And I'm going to turn on my pointer. So we have laser pointer. So we have the farmstead right here, which has 5 assigned development rights. There is an existing house and several accessory structures located on this lot. We also have an existing house right here on a 0.39 acre parcel. This parcel was carved out and had a house built on it long before development rights. It was built around the 1960s. So the development right is implied. And then there is this outlot that was created as a part of Heather Meadows' 2nd edition in 1999. Currently, there are no development rights on it. It was created as an unbuildable outlot when they exhausted their development rights in the 1990s. So for the open space and preliminary plat, these type of plats allow development rights to be doubled in exchange for a paved public street to serve the development with curb and gutter, as well as 50% of the gross acreage, of which half must be upland, is set aside as open space under a temporary conservation easement until municipal services are available to the area. This area is nowhere near our MUSA. It is not in our 2040 plan for municipal services. It likely will not be in our 2050 plan, but so this would be several decades out into the future, if ever. So the 12 residential lots are proposed, and they range from 2.3 acres to 4 acres. For the OS&P, there is no minimum lot size, but each site must allow for 2 septic sites, a primary and an alternative. And there is a maximum lot size of 4 acres in this district. There are primary and alternative septic sites shown on the 10 new lots. The applicant did provide me with an updated exhibit showing the existing septic sites for the 2 lots off of Oakdale. However, they will also need to confirm alternative site that will be allowed based on the soils for that, and that is a condition of approval. Heather Lane will be extended to the south and will move southwest, and that will serve the 10 lots that are proposed on the previous outlot. 2 open space outlots are proposed, the main one being outlot A right here, and then outlot B is over here on the northwest corner of the outlot. Ownership of the open space would be that at this time it's proposed that the subdivider would retain ownership of the outlots. There is a restrictive covenant that would be required in favor of the city, and it would call out that the open space outlots in the future, if they decide to no longer farm it, they no longer want to retain ownership, they can dedicate the open space outlots to the city if the city accepts. The open space outlots can be sold to the owner of lot 1, block 4, the idea being if another farmer wanted to buy both the residents and the outlots to continue farming, that does make sense. It's someone that would be a part of the neighborhood. The open space outlots can be dedicated to a homeowners association that comprises a majority of the homes within this development, or the open space outlots can be sold to a developer once municipal services and water is available. The setbacks for an OS&P are pretty much the same that you would have in the rural residential. The principal structures more than accommodate those setbacks. we run into some issues with the existing agricultural structures that long predate our zoning ordinance. So all the structures on lot 1 of block 4, this one right here, and Oakdale's right here, are used for agricultural purposes. So they all are subject to a 100-foot setback from all property lines. These 2 sheds right here are about 50 feet away, but this property line isn't changing as a result of this plat. So that is going to be grandfathered in as a legal non-conforming. There's no variance that needs to be granted for that because nothing's changing. However, again, this northern shed right here is going to be about 91 feet away once the right-of-way is taken for the new plat. That is a change, and so a variance would need to be granted for that to remain. There are 4 design guidelines listed out for the OSMP. They are explained in detail in the staff report. This plat does satisfy those guidelines except for the requirement for the 100-foot perimeter buffer along Oakdale Drive that would be required. It would conflict with both the existing houses as well as that structure that's only 91 feet away from the property line. So the applicant is requesting that they not be required to put in that buffer. And we'll talk about that more in a second. Then there's also design objectives that OSMPs are supposed to hit. They're supposed to satisfy as many that are possible. They have satisfied quite a few, including arranging lots around a central focal point with the argument that the open space, the farmed area, is the focal point. They've located the lots so that at least 50% of the lots abut open space on at least one side. They've preserved views from each building unit and from off-site vantage points to the maximum extent possible. They've located lots to preserve farmland, and then they've located septic systems on the most suitable soils. And one of the standards that really would not be applicable to this proposal is the requirement to locate, or objective to locate, neighborhood recreational open spaces such that they are an integral part of the neighborhood. Because they are going to be retaining the farmland in their own ownership, it's not going to be a recreational open space. The one item that is not satisfied with the current proposal is the objective to provide covenants to create an architectural theme within the neighborhood. And the 2 objectives where it's possible that it could end up satisfying, but it's just unclear with the information provided, is locating the houses and garages so that the garages do not dominate the streetscape, and then the landscaping of common areas in right-of-way with native vegetation with high wildlife conservation value. So the Planning Commission should discuss whether they believe enough objectives have been met with what's proposed, or if some additional conditions need to be added to maybe hit these last 2 to 3. That could be applied. As far as streets, again, Heather Lane will be extended to the south and southwest. And where they are going to be extending the roadway, they will be required to put in a minimum roadway width of 28 feet face-to-face, which will allow for one-sided parking. The existing cul-de-sac on Heather Lane will be removed, and those existing driveways and culverts will then need to be modified and extended as necessary. And then a temporary cul-de-sac will be required at the end of the new proposed extension. And the engineering memo does go into quite a bit of detail into what this would all entail, including telling the city that we would need to go out before construction starts to document the condition of the current Heather Lane, and then the developer would be responsible for any damages that can be contributed to their construction project once their project has moved forward. So there was a ghost plat submitted to show how Outlot A could be further developed in the future, and it shows a future public street connection from Oakdale Drive, which would ultimately connect to Heather Lane between the 2 lots that, I don't have a very great visual, let me back up here. It would come down here before connecting west to Heather Lane down here. And the only issue with that is where they're showing that road, it would not be permittable due to its location near wetlands. So they will need to move the lot line at least 15 feet west for Lot 1, Block 5 to be able to accommodate a street in the future. So that is a condition of approval. And then we get into the conditional use permit. So again, Lot 1, Block 4 currently is proposed to have an accessory structure footprint of 7,428 square feet. But one structure of less than 200 square feet is exempt from what the city calculates for their final footprint. So the conditional use permit request would be for 7,236 square feet. They are proposing to remove a couple of buildings that are not currently being utilized, this building and this building actually. But there's still going to be about 7,200 square feet of accessory structure space. And they're all used for agricultural purposes. And this is an allowed use through a conditional use permit for parcels less than 10 acres if they are adjacent to an actively farmed property under the same ownership. So staff went through the exercise of comparing the CUP standards to their request, and the CUP standards are satisfied. And then staff does recommend some conditions of approval, including removal of the 2 buildings agreed upon by the applicant and staff. And then should Outlot A no longer be farmed and or the accessory structures no longer be used for agricultural purposes only, the footprint must then be reduced to the by right limit for a 4-acre parcel at that time. And then there's 3 variances. Essentially, the applicant's narrative explains that these are, all 3 of them, the practical difficulty is these are existing conditions, and it's an existing farm that they intend to continue farming. So that's where the practical difficulty for all 3 of them really lie. So the first variance, again, is an exemption from a 100-foot perimeter planted buffer zone along Oakdale Drive. And the standards for the variance appear to be satisfied, and staff proposes a condition of approval is to plant the buffer area as required where it will not conflict with existing structures. So this would require an amendment to their, a change to their landscaping plan, because the buffer yard's currently not shown, and the Planning Commission can certainly discuss whether they believe that condition should be added or if there's any other conditions that would make sense as well. Variance 2 is the exemption for all open space and preservation lots to front an internal paved street. Again, the standards for the variance appear to be satisfied. A potential condition of approval is to close one of the 2 driveway accesses on Lot 1, Block 4. That was discussed in the staff report, and that is included as a condition of approval in the draft resolution before you tonight. Since the staff report had been distributed to the applicant and the Planning Commission, the applicant did come in to speak with staff, and they request both accesses to remain, as the western driveway access is used for primarily their agricultural vehicles and trucks, and then this eastern driveway is what they use to access their residents. So they would like to be able to keep the different types of traffic separated, and so that is definitely a discussion point for you tonight, and the applicant is here tonight to be able to speak and answer questions to that effect as well. Variance 3 is a 91-foot setback from the front property line for an agricultural structure. Again, the standards for the variance appear to be satisfied, particularly since the setback would not be needed if we weren't taking additional right-of-way. So I'm sure if the applicant could keep that additional 9 feet, they would. And then a proposed condition of approval, again, is to plant the buffer yard as required for the OSMP where it will not conflict with this structure. So we should open the public hearing and take testimony. And then staff recommends approval of the draft resolution. So we have the draft resolution approving the preliminary plat, the draft resolution approving the conditional use permit, and a draft resolution approving 3 variances. They are all separated out because theoretically you could approve the preliminary plat and decide that you don't agree the standards have been met for one or more of the other components. And the preliminary plat resolution, the way it's drafted, is if they don't get approvals for those components, they have to revise their plans accordingly. And that's what I have for you.
Thank you. So with that, I'm going to open the public hearing. Now, Natalie, I know normally members of the public have this opportunity to address the commission, and then often they're followed by the applicant. I'd like to flip-flop that if we could. I'd like to hear from the applicant so that the attendees can also hear from the applicant and then have an opportunity to address us. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is the applicant here?
Yeah, we're both here.
Where are you? Hi. Would you step up? Do you have any comments for us, or would you like to plead your case? State your name and your address, please.
My name is Marcus Lee, 22901 Oakdale Drive. Thanks, Natalie, for presenting. That was real nice. The only thing that I would like to talk about, my dad maybe has something else he'd like to mention, is that horseshoe driveway that we have. We'd really like to keep that, just because, you know, just earlier this week I had a semi from the west coast bring a delivery of trees, and getting in and out of there, you know, it's just critical if you have a big semi. So, you know, that's something that we'd like to keep if possible.
So what's unique about that driveway that makes that critical, or what makes the other driveway an option for you?
Well, just if you're on site, it makes a lot more sense. But when you pull in off of Oakdale Drive, there's, you know, especially earlier this week, there's nowhere to turn around. You know, if you go off the driveway, you get stuck. So you don't want to pull into there and then have to back out. You know, there's traffic, whatever. Not a lot of traffic, but it's really nice to be able to go in one way and, you know, be able to just
Oh, I
continue
see what
through.
you're saying. So you pull in one way and then you pull out of the other drive.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you for educating me on that.
Other than that, everything looks good to me, so.
Okay. Sir?
My name's Mark Lee, same address. But regarding this second access, it's been in place and operational for well before, you know, we bought. But, we have farmers that rent land for tillage crops, and then we also have hay on the meadow that is cut twice or 3 times a year. But the combines and everything come through here, and that equipment comes down through here, and there's a drainage ditch here that a lot of times is wet, so you can't get through there. But that's an ingress and egress for implement equipment, farm equipment. This is a better driveway for the house, and we improved the house, renovated it, and, you know, we'd like to have this asphalted up to about here. But we don't want to destroy that, and right now it's not asphalted. But if we did, we'd have to, you know, like St. Marcus, when he mentioned about the semi that came in for delivery, those are isolated circumstances, but most of the equipment for farming comes and goes through here. And then this is like more the residential, you know, nicer driveway, yard and everything. So we'd like to keep that
Okay,
for that purpose for agriculture.
very good. Thank you.
That's the only thing I had, that we talked about earlier in the week, that was just a bullet point that I wanted to address if possible.
Understood. Thank you. Natalie, do we have any cards?
Yes, we have one card. So if anyone else filled out cards, feel free to pass them up this way. But the first card we have here is for Mike Savitsky. If you'd like to approach the podium for any comments.
Sure.
And Mike, if you can just state your name and your
Sure.
address, please.
My name
Thank
is
you.
Mike Savitsky. I live on Hague Drive, 10322 Hague Drive.
Thank
Been
you.
there for over 45 years. And can we go back to that picture?
Can you give me a notebook, please, so I can write down notes? But yes.
Uh,
They moved too quick for you, Mike.
I know, and you know
I'm
what?
sorry, thank you.
That horseshoe driveway is the best thing you guys should allow. There's no way you shouldn't. I actually own, on the other side of the road, I own the farm, 10.5 acres on the other side across from them. And that property is beautiful, and that horseshoe is totally a safety thing with what's going on. I do believe they should be allowed to have that. I have a few questions otherwise, as far as drainage. Can we go back to the plot itself? I just need to understand a little more. Because we have the drainage from that side goes back behind my farm, and then it heads back between me and my neighbor. And right now, we've got a lake there because the drain tile isn't operating. And I don't know if this is the place, but I just like to throw that in there. But so now, I'm understanding that there's gonna be another easement here off of Heather somehow? And you're not able to get it because of the wetlands, is that right?
So typically we ask questions and then I write it down, I can answer it. So it's up to you if you want me to answer the questions as we go.
Can you, or,
So right now, it would be an outlot, so it would be entirely covered by a drainage and utility easement while it's an outlot. And then we have a ghost plat that shows a road going from here
All the
to
way in.
here.
So it'll have another road someday when it's developed, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
And then this easement here would also be critical. I've not seen it drawn somewhere between them for to access the back. Or, I don't know, maybe I've never been back there.
So there's no road easement proposed
See,
at
like
this
on
time?
Hague Drive over here, if you went over to here, we have an easement out of our neighborhood going both ways. And we did that 45, 50 years ago. We had the insight to do that. So I'm just letting you know that making easements here to develop this later might be a thought.
okay.
And then I'm kind of wondering what's going on with the drainage and stuff, but that's the way God made it, so we're gonna live with it.
Sounds good, Mike.
Right, but that's kind of what I wanted to bring up here. Love the property, you guys are doing a great job. Yeah,
Great. Thank you for your
Thank you.
comments.
yeah.
Any other cards?
I don't have any other cards, so if anyone else would like to approach the podium, please feel free to do so.
Okay, this is your opportunity to address this on this application. Would anyone have any comments? Yes?
May I?
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if you could, please state your name and your address. Thank you.
Lori Kasimer, I'm at 10265 Heather Lane in addition 2, I believe. And my husband and I have been there for 25 years. I have a couple questions, so I'm not sure if you want me I apologize, I didn't realize we were supposed to sign up ahead of time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so, hold on.
questions.
What's the best way to address questions? I'm just
So
concerned
they
that
should-
we'll be here until 2
Yeah,
in
so
the morning
they should
with
go ahead and use their
questions.
5 minutes, say whatever
Okay.
questions they have, I'm writing them down, and then it's helpful because especially if someone else has a similar question, then I can address them all once the public hearing is closed before we get into the commission discussion.
That makes sense. So if I could ask you have 5 minutes. If you have questions, say them. She's gonna write them down. We're gonna let everyone else have an opportunity to ask questions. And then Natalie will do her best to answer them.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you. So my first question came from your description about realigning the cul-de-sac that I currently live in. I wasn't aware that that was on the plat plan, so if we could get some more information on how that would affect our properties, the 3 houses that currently live in that cul-de-sac. And then, I guess my question is trying to understand what the current owners want to do with the existing outlots that they want to keep for their tree farm. It is a beautiful tree farm. And then the farmland behind. And then trying to understand the intent then to develop 12 additional lots. Like if you own that property, what's the intent of breaking certain acreage of that off and building the 12 additional lots instead of just leaving it all the beautiful tree farm? Those were my 2 questions. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for coming out. Anyone else? No one else? Yes, please.
I just have, and maybe I'm just looking for clarification here. So,
And if you could, please state your name and
my name
address.
is Dan Gronke. I
Hi,
live
Dan.
at 10300 Sundance Road.
Welcome.
So I guess these are questions you can probably just answer for me right away. So do I interpret this right, that this is the Hague Drive development now, here? Okay, and this is, the current Heather Meadows is here? So you're looking at adding this road, and then this is my property right here, right? That's all I wanted. Thank you.
That was easy.
Yeah, I know why.
And Mr. Chair, if people could avoid stepping away from the mic, it makes it very difficult to get minutes later
Okay,
on.
thank you.
No, it's not
Yeah,
just.
that's okay.
That
That's,
is the point.
No,
that was my
absolutely.
fault. I should have yelled at you when I had the chance. Anyone else have any comments? No? Yes. Please state your name and your address.
Hi, Deanne Fiore, 10211 Hague Drive.
Welcome.
I don't understand a lot of this, but if you could go back to the first slide, I'd like to understand what the outlet that backs up to Hague Drive means. Yes, I'd like to understand what this means. Does this mean that it will not be developed for many years, or it will be developed? I'd also like to understand why we would allow a development that maybe doesn't meet our Corcoran covenants. Don't we have so many acres that we need to have to build new country homes? Isn't there a 3 or 5 acre limit? Why would we allow something less than what our covenants are? That would be another question. The other question that I have is, I know Mike mentioned that we have an easement coming off Hague Drive. I'd like to have assurance that that's not something they would break through to develop in the future. So those are the things I'd like to understand, please.
Okay. Do you have any other comments or just those questions?
That's all for now, Mark.
Well, thank you for coming out. Thank you for coming out. Did you get all of that? Okay. Anyone else? Yes. And if you could, please state your name and your address.
Mike Saha, 10315 Hague Drive.
Hi, Mike.
If you could flip back, I just wanted to see,
And-
one question is,
And if I could just ask you to please stay by the mic, because
Okay.
they have to. There you go.
my question is.
Creative
this is
problem
still
solving.
Agriculture based. My question is, will they still access these backfields off of Heather Lane as they have been doing in the past?
Okay, did you get that? I appreciate your creative problem solving with the microphone, Mike. Anyone? Yes? Welcome, and if you could, just state your name and your address.
Jeff Halter, 10480 Heather Lane.
Great.
Question I
Welcome.
have is, where you come out here, why is there a cul-de-sac here and not access to County Road 19? That's one question I had. Second question I had is, they're talking about a road that's coming in here to here, right? From the street Outfield, is that correct? Potentially, or no, is that right? So there's not gonna be any streets off Oakfield that comes back to this development?
Not currently.
Not currently,
Sorry,
but-
I'm just answering.
But the
Not
city-
currently.
The city requires goals plat for future development,
Okay.
and an engineer draws up, it's just whatever.
Gotcha.
And that's what they draw, but it's, I don't know, you need to explain it.
Yeah, I can,
It's a
so,
requirement they require for the future that meets whatever they require, but there's no,
Gotcha.
they're gonna farm all that.
Yeah. So, I was just wondering about that, because if there could be potential down the road with another one there too, so. If I understand it right, like this area down here, like these areas you're gonna keep farming, is that correct? Okay. That was just a question, because I live in this corner here, and this is all old land, and I was just wondering if there was some time, if there was gonna be something done there.
Because that existing home that's there is
Yeah.
like a quarter acre or real small, we're changing that to like a 4 acre parcel.
This property here,
Yeah,
okay.
does it show that anywhere?
It does, but Mr. Chair, the public hearing, they should be addressing the commission and not the applicant directly.
Okay,
So-
that's a good point. So if you could, if you have questions,
Sure.
ask us, don't ask the applicant
Okay.
directly, but I appreciate your willingness to field questions, so,
Those are the questions I had.
okay, thank you. Did you get that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for coming out tonight. One more? Okay, let's see. Maybe we'll get two more.
I don't think they're gonna like me for this, but.
We'll like you. That's okay. We're all about sharing
Glen Harold,
ideas.
10205 Hague. This is pretty wet right here. What are the odds where they can, if they probably gotta get DNR removal, but to build or to dig a big enough pond, A, to help water, irrigate their trees, and B, to alleviate the problem on the other side of Oakdale? Only question.
Okay. Did you get that only question?
Kind of.
That's a DNR
Yeah.
question probably, but.
It probably is, but
Okay,
I like putting Natalie on the spot, so we'll see if she can,
we'll see what I can come up with.
we'll see what she can come up with. Any other comments? Anyone else?
How do we find the answers to that? Where's it
Fo-
gonna be?
Folks in the back? Hi, thank you. Did you guys have some comments that you wanted to share with us? My teacher in high school used to call me out when I talked in class too. I've always wanted to do that. Sorry for putting you on the spot. Any other comments? Anyone?
If there's no other comments, I would make a motion to close the public hearing.
And I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And that will close the public hearing. So Natalie, before we begin, I just want to say something about the packets for this week. I really liked the discussion points at the end, and I thought that they were very helpful. I know that they helped me. I don't know if they helped everyone else. So I just wanted to say thank you. Who would like to start off with this conversation?
Do we want to give Natalie the opportunity to address any of the questions that feel appropriate to be addressed at this point in time?
Would you like to do
Yeah.
that now, or wait for us to?
We can do it now just so that might alleviate some of
Okay,
them.
perfect.
So as far as how the realignment of the existing cul-de-sac on Heather Lane is going to impact the 3 lots that currently front onto that cul-de-sac, that would be something that needs to get, I believe our engineering team will have to help with the applicant to get that finalized onto what that actual process will look like. The applicant will have to work with property owners to make that least disruptive as possible to get you access onto the new road. So that is something that will be further fleshed out, and if you would like to take my business card, I would be happy to connect you with our engineering team and start that process to get what that would look like. As far as the intent of the 2 outlots and the intent of the development, the applicant does have altogether 6 development rights, and the idea of the development rights program is to allow farmers to be able to continue farming as an option, as well as be able to sell off some of their land to make things workable for them. And as far as the developer-specific intent, that will have to be answered by the applicant if they so choose. And then the development of Outlot A, again, they are put into a temporary conservation easement that is for the open space and preservation plat, it is temporary. So at this point, it would not be removed until municipal services are available to the area. Municipal services are not planned for this area in as far out as the city goes in our planning documents. We do a 20-year horizon. So our current comp plan is 2040. Next year, we will likely start the process for our 2050 comp plan. And it's not going to be a part of the area that would be served by municipal services. I am confident in saying that. So I can't say that it'll never get developed, but the idea is it would not be able to be further developed until there are services that would allow for a denser development in that area. Corcoran covenants, why do we allow smaller acres? So our minimum lot size in the rural residential district is 2 acres. Again, the development rights program is what helps offset it so that we're not exceeding a density of overall 1 in 10. There is some flexibility from the Met Council to, when we do an open space and preservation plat, to go to 1 in 5. But the overall goal is 1 in 10. So our development rights were assigned originally to keep based on it's changed a couple times, but essentially it's 1 in 10. And then we have a minimum lot size of 2 acres. And again, this allows people with acreage to decide, okay, I have 3 development rights, I have 30 acres, I'd like to continue farming most of it, but I'd like to carve off a smaller acre to someone who's interested, whether that be a family member or otherwise. So it's supposed to provide some flexibility, but actually they are showing 2.3 acres as their smallest minimum lot size. So they are meeting that even though there is no minimum lot size for this type of plat. So it is in line with the acreage that we would expect in this area. And then easement coming off. So I didn't show the ghost plat, so I pulled it up here 1 second. See if it'll. Oh, I have to pull out of this.
What she means by ghost plat is this is the city requirement to show what could be developed in the future when services are available to the area. So this is that time frame that she's talking about that is way down the line.
Yeah, for some reason it's not showing up. I don't know if it's doing that. Okay, so there is a ghost plat in the packet, and I apologize, it's just not showing up on my screen, so I'm gonna go back to the logo. Which does show how the property could be developed in the future should urban services become available. So again, it does show that there would be a public street from Oakdale that comes down to between 2 of the lots that they're proposing down here, and it would go to the southwest where it would link up with Heather Lane. And it also does show that easement, I believe, that gentleman was talking about from Hague Drive, to allow for a connection there as well. Because the idea is you do want connectivity overall. So it does allow for future connectivity. They're not proposing that now. They're not proposing that in any immediate future scenario. As you heard from them, their intent is to farm it for the long foreseeable future.
It's kind of hard to see that little picture.
Yep, if you want to, it's going to be available in the booklet. It's going to be available in the booklet that's right outside the room here if you want to look. It was also available online.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, it wasn't pulling up, so I don't have that option at the moment. But it is in the packet, and then, let's see here. Coming off Hague, so access for outlets on Heather. As far as farming access for outlots on Heather Lane, I don't know how that might change for the applicants. That might be a question they'd be better able to answer if they would still need to access Heather Lane for Outlot B and the south side of Outlot A. There is a very fairly big wet area that might make it difficult for them to always come from Outlot A from the north side of Oakdale, so they might still need that, but I'll let you speak to that if the commission would like that answered. And then cul-de-sac, no access to County Road 18. It is a temporary cul-de-sac. Right now, it would eventually connect should those properties to the west also start to develop. So it is a temporary cul-de-sac to be able to turn around is the idea, because you can't right now it would not be easy to turn around without a temporary cul-de-sac, but that would not be a long-term solution It'd be a fairly long-term solution because I don't know when the west would ever develop, but the reality is, should it develop, it would be solved at that time where it would further connect to ultimately County Road 19 or some type of frontage onto County Road 19. I think that's, regarding the streets on Oakdale, I think the Ghost Plat talks about that. And then as far as requiring ponding to alleviate existing drainage across the street, so the project is required to meet the stormwater requirements of the city of Corcoran as well as the Elm Creek Watershed Management Commission. And they have rules to address rate control and water quality standards for all developments. Developments cannot make an existing situation any worse, but they are not responsible for correcting situations that are outside of their property, that are outside of their control. So basically, we hold them to an extent of not making anything any worse, ideally better, but we, as the city, are not able to require them to put in additional ponding to alleviate a situation outside of the property. But yeah, so I would say that they will go through not only the city engineers process, there are some additional standards they have to meet for the engineering with the city, and then they also have to go through the Elm Creek Watershed Review to confirm that they are in compliance with those rules. And that is what I have at this time.
Thank you. And Commissioner Brumman, can you refresh my memory? We closed the public hearing, correct?
We did close the public
Okay,
hearing.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm getting old, so sometimes I need some prompting, so don't mind me. Natalie, thank you. I know that you worked very hard on this report. Now, Natalie, I just want to make sure that I understand, just to help me kind of organize our discussion. Preliminary plat, CUP, and variances? Do I have that correct?
Correct.
Okay. With that in mind, if my colleagues think that it would help to kind of organize our discussion based on those three buckets, we can do that. Otherwise, not. So who would like to start off?
I'll start off. I have a
Okay.
general question, and that has to do with the development rights and the OSMP. And this is primarily for my edification. But if we're using, if the applicant has 6 DRs, development rights, and then to elevate that to the 10 or 12 lots, we're using 200% of the OSMP. How can that area that's reserved for the OSMP be developed in the future?
Because the city is not, we have to work with the Met Council as well. And the idea of the OSMP, the whole reasoning behind it is you're clustering houses, because you either want really large lots for eventual sewer, or you want really small lots. The 5 acre lots, having a ton of those is actually what's really makes it really difficult. And so the idea being, you get an additional bonus for clustering the housing here and retaining an open lot, because those are the situations we want to see to be able to put in efficient and effective infrastructure later on. And the Met Council, my understanding, would not allow us to put it into a permanent conservation easement, so it's a temporary conservation easement. With the caveat, it would have to go, this area would have to be identified as part of our Metropolitan Urban Service Area, our MUSA, and at this point, there are no intentions to do that. So.
Okay.
I will piggyback on what you said, because that was actually, this is the first time that we've had the opportunity to really see how the open space and preservation impacts a plat. And so that this was a helpful exercise, because I was under the impression as well that it was to preserve open space for as long as we possibly could, right? Like in perpetuity, but obviously we can't do that because we're governed by another level of organization. So that was helpful to understand. I don't mind tackling all of this as a chunk, but if you would prefer to keep it separated, I can just talk about the preliminary plat. What would you prefer?
I would prefer if we keep them in buckets.
Keep it in a bucket,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm simple that way, and I like to keep things simple.
Sure. Then at this point in time, I do feel like after really looking at the OSMP objectives, that this plat meets those requirements. And so I would be in favor of making a motion to approve that preliminary plat. It would be awesome if we could tag in just the proper seeding with native vegetation. But that would be my only comment on something that was specifically called out for the commission to discuss.
Can I ask a question before we move forward with that motion?
Sure.
Oh, I didn't make an official
Oh,
motion.
you're
Yeah.
not?
Nope,
Okay,
I
you're
was just weighing in.
Got it. And Natalie, sorry if this is duplicative to your point earlier, but why do we have a maximum lot size in the OSM? Like in a
Because
OSM?
again, the idea is to cluster small lots. And so you want to have a maximum size in that situation because it's the 5-acre lots that make it really difficult to put in infrastructure later on. Because it's just simply not cost effective. It's really expensive to have a series of 5-acre lots and put that in later on. So the idea is to keep it under that threshold and keep the lots clustered and smaller together. Why we have that no minimum lot size. You do have to have 2 effective septic sites. And then we have that maximum cap to keep it a cluster, essentially.
Despite the fact that this is maybe a lot that's not going to be, developed in the long-term future.
Sorry, say that again?
Never mind, it was a thought. Okay. Is this now the time to talk about HOAs, or would that be in another section?
That would be, well,
Yeah.
you could talk about it, but I think it'd be under the conditional use permit.
It'd be under this part, yep, the
Yeah.
plat.
Oh, this part.
Okay, so thoughts on that? So we obviously have quite a lot of development proposals happening, even this evening. Many will have HOAs, we've approved a lot recently. These types of 2.3 to 4 acre lots are where, people coming from the city want to come here and possibly have chickens, okay, maybe. HOAs a lot of times may not allow that. How do we try, and it isn't indicated if there will be an HOA or not. I think in your notes it maybe said you'd probably want to do that earlier rather than later, define if there will be an HOA. Was that in the staff notes?
So the applicant's narrative states that they do not want to have an HOA.
They do not want an
The
HOA.
concern being there are limited options as to what they can do to divest their interest in the outlots in the future. So if there is a chance that they would want to divest it to an HOA because they no longer want to continue farming or owning these areas, or a future family member might have that, it's going to be a lot harder to establish a homeowners association within these lots later on that could reasonably take over that ownership for the outlot than it is if they were to start it now. So we're leaving it up to the applicant as to how they want to handle it. We're just trying to call that out so that they're aware of that potential complication in the future.
Okay, and only from my view, but like that makes a big difference to me on the application and like the types of activities and the culture of the neighborhood. And is it possible to have that as a condition or not in the approval?
Have what as a condition?
No HOA.
So that our code says specifically the open space can be owned by the subdivider, the city, or an HOA. So I
Yep.
don't believe that we have the authority to tell them they can't follow city code.
But what they're saying is that you can't make it a condition, but right now the applicant is not stating
Right.
that they
I
would
know that
want
right
it,
now.
yeah.
Okay, right, for right now. Okay, that's all, thank you.
And the reason it would be difficult to bring in an HOA later is because the homeowners
Would all have
would
to
have
agree.
to agree to
Yeah,
that.
and they've already been there for
Normally,
so
they'd
many
agree
years,
to it when
yeah.
they purchase the property, that it's part of an HOA.
Absolutely,
We get
yeah.
that.
And we have other open space areas, open space preservations, and even unbuildable outlots that are owned by an HOA, and that is seen as basically that is the HOA common area is the outlot. And so it's not unusual for some of our neighborhoods in the rural area to have an HOA specifically for maintenance of that outlot.
So what is the purpose of the outlots and who maintains them if there is no HOA?
The subdivider or the city are the other two
So
options.
the owner is probably going to maintain them. and
That
he's
is his
either going-
intent at this
He's going
time.
to farm them, probably, okay. I guess I'll just address too, as far as the preliminary plat, I don't see any problems with that. It would be kind of nice to have the native mix up in the public right of way. I think that would be nice if that's possible at this time, if they're getting a little additional money from selling property and then they've got some money to put into that. that's pretty much it for the preliminary plat, as far as
Okay.
I'm concerned.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Natalie, as it relates to development rights and the density calculations, I just want to make sure that I understand things correctly. So for this application, there are 6 development rights on the parcel. Because this is an open space preservation plat, the city code provides under section 970.070 that the applicant is allowed to double the number of development rights because it is an OSMP with an urban street section, which means that there are 12 development rights. And could you remind me what an urban street section is?
It is a paved street with curb and gutter.
Okay, so basically a roadway with curbing and gutter?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And for the OSMP design objectives, and having read them, I think that the guidelines here are met, being the 4 that are required by code 940.050. And for the other guidelines, the applicant only has to design such that as many of the objectives are met as possible, and that it's not necessarily that every box needs to be checked, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let's see, but you did draw our attention in the packet to seeding the right-of-way. Do others think we should recommend a specific requirement that the seed there is native with conservation value? I think I heard someone mention that.
A few of us mentioned that, yes, we were in favor of making that a requirement.
Okay, all right. I don't have any other questions as it relates to the preliminary plat. Discussion on the conditional use permit. Who'd like to begin?
I'm going to back up for one quick second because
Okay.
we forgot to talk about the deferring the wetland buffer plantings until it's no longer farmed, and I would agree. That was the last discussion point, that as long as it's actively being farmed, there's no reason to require those plantings.
Okay.
Yep. And those would be along, where would those be? Just
So-
around the wetlands?
Yeah, so the wetlands that are on the residential lots, those buffers and monument signs would need to go in now, but on the farmed out lots, those areas would not have
that makes
those
sense.
buffers and monuments quite yet.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Who would like to start the discussion on the conditional use permit?
I will. So I think that this meets the requirement because it's an adjacent parcel. So in terms of being able to exceed it, the footprint for agricultural purposes, it meets those requirements. So I would be in favor of approving the conditional use permit.
I agree. I have no questions or concerns there.
Okay, so based upon what I reviewed in the report, I do not have any concerns related to the CUP for the accessory structures, provided what the code says. But it is specific, and I just want to indicate my strong support of the condition that if the adjacent outlot is not used for agricultural purposes, the structures that exceed the footprint allowed must be removed. Any other discussion on the conditional use permit? Okay, who wants to start the discussion on variances?
I'd be happy to. And that is that.
I knew I could count on you.
And in this case, I also feel like that I would be in favor of just approving all of the variances. The conditions, I'm trying to think. The only thing that really was a concern, and I am obviously in favor of it because of the safety, trying to back out onto Oakdale Drive from a one driveway, it doesn't seem practical or reasonable at all. And so I would agree that we should allow them to continue having both of that, the U-shaped drive, so there'd be those 3 access points from Oakdale Drive. And I'm trying to see if there's anything else we need to call out specifically, but I don't think so. There was a point, and I think that this was talked about in the preliminary plat, but I thought it was one of the other two, where you had mentioned that the covenants weren't satisfied in terms of, it was on your bullet points with, I'm trying to think of the
Under the
page.
preliminary plat?
It could have been, but I was just indicating, because you were saying that it was related to the HOA for in terms of like the likeness of all of the buildings.
Oh.
And I'm just indicating that at this point in time, I would agree that I feel like in keeping with the agricultural feel and culture of this area, I don't feel like there is a need to have those covenants satisfied in order to move forward with this. So that was the only thing I wanted to call out specifically. Otherwise, I would be ready to approve the variances.
I agree, both the variances were reasonable. Agree on keeping the dual different purpose driveways. Yeah, I think it's good.
I also agree. I don't think there needs to be any conformity in the looks of the homes. I think everybody usually gets their own builder out here. There's not a developer or builder coming in and doing that. I think the driveway makes perfect sense. You guys have been using it for decades. Might as well. If you have a big truck coming in, it doesn't make sense to make them trying to turn around, so. Still a rural agricultural area out there, so it shouldn't be a problem. Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay. Well, for all of these reasons offered by my colleagues, I suggest that the commission recommend approval of this application, and I'll make the motion to approve. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, congratulations.
Well, it'll go before council. I
Yeah.
saw that look, Dean.
You made it through us.
I'm somebody finally. As everybody ends up leaving, they think it's approved. It's gotta go through 5 more of us guys that were elected, so we'll have.
And Natalie has something to
We'll
add.
have other input too.
And I will note the city council meeting was scheduled for May 23rd, and it got rescheduled this week to May 21st because there was a attendance conflict with the council. So just so everyone isn't thrown off by that, it would go to council on Tuesday, May 21st. Yeah, that's what I have.
Okay. So with that, I'd like to open the public hearing for agenda item 6B. This is, and am I pronouncing
Mr.
this?
Chair, you wanna give the neighborhood a minute to leave if they don't wanna stay?
Oh, sure. Was it something I said?
Actually, we could lock the doors and make you all.
Don't
stay.
all leave at once, folks. Thank you for coming out.
All right, everybody in the
Have a
back
good
row,
night.
you gotta move to the front now too.
Oh, my goodness. Well, it's good to see you. Have a good night. We volunteered for 4-H, so we served and cleaned up at the dinner.
Oh, I was gonna say, it seems like I know them.
I had the opportunity to meet them.
There's some seats up front, too.
Yeah. I don't think we're gonna get to this. Like, that's a lot in one night.
Yeah, okay, yeah, now that we know that, I don't understand why it won't work on the screen, but it works.
What'd you say? Don't forget.
I'll try not to, but it depends on what time this is all wrapped up.
Right.
Am I ready to try again?
Yeah, whenever you'd like, I'm ready to go.
I can hear, so I'm ready.
You.
Let's keep the ball moving.
All right, yeah,
We got a
thank
long
you.
meeting.
Do we want to move the screen? Can you guys see the screen? Like back up.
So, we're gonna keep going here. I'd like to open the public hearing for agenda item 6B, city file number 23-034. This is the, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this, is it Chastek? Chastek. Farm preliminary plat, preliminary PUD, and rezoning. This is an application to plat 116 single-family homes. Natalie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant for this request is Trek Real Estate and Development and Hempel Real Estate, and they are doing business as Emerald Rose LLC. And again, it's 116 single-family residential lots that they are proposing, in addition to 7 outlots. The property the subject property is 7600 Maple Hill Road. It is north of County Road 10 and Bass Lake crossings. And then Maple Hill Road here is on the west, and then Maple Hill Estates is to the north. In addition to the residential lots, an off-road trail will be provided along the north boundary of this project in compliance with the 2040 Parks and Trails map, and it will eventually connect to the existing trail system at Bass Lake. So there are a few components to the application, as noted by the chair. The first component is a rezoning request. Currently, the property is zoned RSF2. This is a single-family residential district, and they are requesting to be rezoned to planned unit development, or PUD. And the staff report goes into detail the standards that the Planning Commission and City Council need to consider whether or not the rezoning standards have been met. Staff find there is reasoning to support the rezoning request, but this is ultimately a policy choice where the city has a high degree of discretion. So the Planning Commission is asked to provide feedback on that question. And then we can get to really the heart of the PUD request. The preliminary PUD development plan is subject to several standards. The city adopted a new PUD ordinance last year that requires several design standards to be met of any PUD. Most of those standards have been met with this application. However, there is a little remaining question of how the open space fits in with our guidelines. We do require 12% open space for 55-foot wide lots, or it's under 65, but as low as 55-foot wide lots are required to have 12% open space. However, the City Council does have the authority to deviate from this standard when there might be some site constraints or the public benefits outweigh the reduction in open space requirement. The open space must be upland, but a large portion of the open space proposed in this proposal is a floodplain and or will be inaccessible due to the slope. It's mostly noted here as part of the hydraulic green corridor. They did provide an updated exhibit today that showed that there is more technical upland than what I estimated in my staff report. So, but this area right here is the hydraulic green corridor, and that would definitely be under the 100-year ordinary high water level. Yes?
Could I interrupt you? Is the applicant here? I have a question. I've never heard of a hydraulic green corridor. Did you get that from like ChatGPT or something? Or where did that come from? It's like creative marketing. I like it. I'm not being critical. I like it. Okay. All right. That's okay. Why don't you sit down? We'll keep going. I was just kind of curious.
It is actually.
I'm sorry to derail you.
So this area here of the corridor is under the 100-year ordinary high water level, and they do have another density exhibit that also shows that this outlot is also under that, or within that floodplain as well. The rest of it does technically meet upland. So staff, with that new information, staff's calculating that outside of the floodplain, the proposed open space is 4.34 acres. So it's about 11.3%. So they are much closer than what I originally thought in my staff report. However, there is still the matter of these are very steep slopes. Are they truly accessible? So the Planning Commission and City Council will need to discuss whether the view of that open space, because it is intended to be planted with some wildflowers, is the view, is that enough, or did they want this to actually be open space, or what exactly do we want to do in terms of potentially deviating from our open space requirement. So that's definitely a point for discussion tonight. And then the requested flexibilities are primarily from the dimensional standards for our RSF3 district. So the PUD ordinance states that the underlying ordinance will be based on the proposed lot dimensions, whatever's closest. So that's why it turns into the RSF3 that we're deviating from. They are proposing a minimum lot area of 6,875 square feet. RSF3 requires about 7,500, or does require 7,500. The minimum lot width is 55 feet, where it was 65 feet in the RSF3. And then additionally, they are requesting a 7.5-foot side setback. This will allow for a 15-foot minimum separation. This is a request that we're seeing over and over again. It is a sign that our code really needs to be updated overall, but working within the framework that we have, this is one of the ways to handle that request. And this is instead of a 10-foot living, 5-foot garage setback, which also it has a minimum separation of 15 feet. They are asking for a rear setback of, I had in my documents 20 feet. Again, the applicant spoke with me since the packet went out and has said that really they can meet 25 feet except for maybe a few lots. And so I'm hoping that she'll touch on that more in her presentation today. And other than that, there's 20 lots that would have to have the lot width measured at a minimum required front setback. We do allow this for lots on a cul-de-sac. These lots are more on a curve, and so they're not technically on a cul-de-sac, they're mostly on a curve. And so we would have to specifically call that flexibility out for the impacted lots. Every other lot would be measured per normal. And the other deviation is they're requesting a 60% maximum garage frontage instead of 55% where we have required in our architectural standards for single family homes. So again, here's the open space. They are proposing a significant amount, a 60-foot setback essentially here of open space along Maple Hill Road. This outlot G, it's not all wetland, it is for the most part all floodplain, but doesn't necessarily mean it would be inaccessible. It's just that it is a floodplain area. And then, so we have these view corridors that they have tried to incorporate here and here. And then all of this would be planted, including the hydraulic area. All that would be planted with prairie seeding. And then we also have some additional upland around the trail that would count towards the open space as well. Excuse me. So for the proposed PUD public benefits, this application came in as a concept plan before we adopted our PUD public benefit policy. So that's why it's handled a little differently in the staff report than the next application that we're going to see. They are not subject to the policy, although I do call out a couple areas where they are voluntarily complying. So their proposed PUD public benefits is their stormwater management design includes off-site drainage. They're attempting to improve a situation that is very difficult for not just them, but surrounding properties. And then a variety of home exterior designs are proposed. We require at least 5 styles to meet the minimum standard of a PUD. They are proposing 12 different exterior designs. And then there is an internal private trail sidewalk system they're proposing that provides the view sheds of a hydraulic green corridor. And then an improvement of Maple Hill Road and the Maple Hill Road County Road 10 intersection. The reason why this is listed as a benefit is because while it will benefit their development and it's being triggered at this point because of their development and everything that's happened to this point, it will be to the benefit as well of the existing Bass Lake Crossing, existing Maple Hill Estate, as well as the future benefit when the downtown area to the west develops, because this work would have already been done. So that's why it's not just benefiting their property, it really is benefiting the larger area. Again, a 60-foot setback from Maple Hill Road is an open space area, and that is proposed. And then these are the areas where they're voluntarily complied with our PUD public benefit policy. There was significant collaboration with the adjoining landowner to the east as they worked through how to manage that shared property line. as these developments have moved forward. And that was a significant effort, and I think it was painful for both applicants, and they have made a much stronger application because of it. Extensive internal landscaping is also proposed. They've almost doubled the required landscaping with what they've proposed. In some areas, I believe it was closer to triple. And I'd have to look up the exact numbers, but I know I was pretty impressed. They have a lot of landscaping. And they are proposing predominantly native plants in their landscaping, and they are also proposing primarily use of our Northeast District preferred trees list. And this is in the Southeast Districts. They do not need to comply with that. Regarding landscaping, we do have a buffer yard ordinance, and when an area, a boundary for the project abuts a property of the same district, you don't have to do a planted buffer yard, you have to maintain the rear and side setback of the rear setback of that district. It's a little confusing, I will give you that. But you have, along those shared property lines, you're supposed to basically maintain the rear setback of the district. What makes it super confusing is that ordinance really didn't call out how to handle PUDs. So far, we've been treating PUDs as RSF3, because again, that's the underlying district that we're deviating from. The rear setback in the RSF3 is typically 30 feet. However, Bass Lake Crossing, where they have a shared boundary to the south, is 25 feet. Fairway Shores, which is the next application we'll be looking at, they're requesting a 25-foot rear setback. Chastic is arguably also requesting a 25 setback, so staff believes we should allow them to have just a buffer yard of 25 feet. We think that makes sense considering the surrounding areas. And then staff is also recommending that the PUD approvals handle the setback in this area as a part of the district instead of having a separate conservation easement, because we're not requiring any plantings in this area. And that's how typically we would handle it outside of a PUD. We would have a conservation easement. For the preliminary PUD development plan, one thing that came up during staff review was they have a couple areas on here where they have a sidewalk, and then they cross and there's a sidewalk. And then there's this internal private trail that they've proposed to link the two view corridors. Staff said that they would prefer to see really the one side, because you're supposed to have a sidewalk on at least one side. And they think it might be a better alternative to just have the sidewalk loop around this internal block. It would minimize some of the pavement in the area, and then they don't need to have a separate trail, but it would provide more connectivity with less road crossings. So that is right now a condition of approval based on the staff recommendation for that, but the Planning Commission can certainly discuss. The trail right now is shown in a couple areas where it actually conflicts with wetland buffers, and you have to be at least 5 feet away from wetland buffers. And then also this private street, there needs to be a 5-foot separation between the street and the trail to be able to, for maintenance, basically for maintenance to get in there. So there's going to need to be some shifting of possibly the street, and as well as the trail will need to shift to be outside of the wetland buffers. So it's likely that the trail is actually going to come down right about here before connecting to the east. And then it must go up to the east property line so it can connect to the trail easement that will be coming for Fairway Shores, which is again the next application. Additionally, the applicant would like to put up a fence along, that's a berm fence kind of highlighted in yellow here. That's where they'd like to put up a fence to provide screening for their residents. However, there were a couple concerns that got brought up by staff, including the long-term maintenance of the open space area, and then also walling off the trail in the open space. And so staff did confirm with our wetland specialist that they would be able to put a fence. They would have to get approved by him, but a fence could go over that wetland area, which would allow them to, if they wanted to really put that fence all the way up to the north property line to take care of the screening. We would prefer to see landscaping in that area, but they do have the option of putting up a fence, so that's where we would like to see it. We would also like to see that the fence does not go any closer to Maple Hill than this west property line here, so that the trail is open and accessible to the public, and it's not hidden away. So once we get through all of that, if all the flexibility requests, if the rezoning and the PUD plan are approved, then the preliminary plat will comply with the applicable ordinances and requirements. There may be some changes to the lot layout and the design in order to comply with the conditions of approval between preliminary and final plat, but that is expected. And so staff does recommend that we open the public hearing and take testimony. We do recommend approval with the draft ordinance approving the rezoning to PUD, draft resolution approving findings of fact to support the rezoning, a draft resolution approving the preliminary PUD plan, and a draft resolution approving the preliminary plat. The Planning Commission can make adjustments to the resolutions, including the conditions of approval or additional flexibility or additional public benefits or how they want to scope that discussion. That can certainly be changed. Or if you find that the standards of one or more components of the application are not satisfied, then you do have the option of recommending denial. It is, again, most of this application has a high level of discretion with the city. But if you do recommend denial, then findings of fact should be provided to staff to forward to City Council. And that's what I have.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and I'll say the applicant is here, and she does have a brief presentation to share as well.
Okay.
So.
Very good, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And if you could, just state your name before you begin.
My name is Ben Krznak with Hempel Real Estate and co-developer with Beth Houston and Trek Development. Yeah, Natalie, great presentation. Really appreciate all of that.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull this. It does not like Adobe today, so hold on. Are you able to pull? We'll have him pull it up on his computer. Can you pull it up? You go to it's in the agenda file. I apologize.
You're probably getting hacked.
All right, I'm gonna do it. Oh, do you have?
Oh, yeah, that. This one's not gonna work for me. Sorry about this. Yep.
All right.
Just take a second.
Showing up.
So I guess we'll start with kind of why we're here. Obviously, we're trying to build some houses. That's the obvious part. But, you know, we're kind of running into this issues with our site versus what your city code requires for density. And so we're just barely at that, just over 3 per acre density. And so we had to go to this PUD route to get some 55-foot lots in there because of our wetlands and because of this stormwater.
It's working.
You're up.
Good
job.
Okay. Yeah, all the stormwater that we're taking on from the adjacent properties, and so obviously it's been the Chastic family property for I think 100 years or something. A long time, right? The greenhouses have been cleared off, some of the foundation been taken out, worked through all the environmental stuff and all that. So yeah, I just had some notes that I think Natalie did a great job and covered most of it. I just want to kind of explain what we're asking for. Just a couple things about the site, because Natalie pointed out this is going to be a 60-foot buffer along Maple Hill, and that also happens to be where there was just a few lots that are at like that 6,800 minimum that we're proposing, which are like these 4 lots, and there's this lot 100, have the smaller lots, but for the most part, those are gonna back up to that open area, so there's gonna be actually, it's gonna feel like a pretty big home site for those people that live there. And then on the south side, for the most part, those are all 65s. There's a few, as you get over to these, as kind of the road curves get a little bit smaller, some 55s, and I think there. So, yeah, as we're talking about minimum of 55-foot lots. However, 53% are actually going to be 65-foot lots. So it's not a small lot development. And we're looking at a minimum of 6,800 square foot lot, but our average lot is actually going to be well above 7,500. It's going to be 8,200. So, like, especially like those lots on the south side, there's a lot of 8, 9s, and 10s in there. There's a 14,000 square foot lot, so that it's definitely not a small lot situation. This is cool that I can control it. So just going back, 20-foot rear setback. There's only 2 lots that we need that for, and that is these 2 that are lots 28 and 87, because they're on that curve. There's you got a setback from the street, so by the time you do that, you end up with a little bit smaller building pad than is ideal. So we're just asking for flexibility. You guys said absolutely not. I think we would figure it out. We just have a little different looking house that has maybe a garage that's more of like a L-shaped house versus how a lot of the houses are going to have a garage and then the house to the right or left of it. Let's see, 60-foot garage frontage. This is really for the 65-foot lots. So for the larger lots, we want to try to get 3-car garages on those, and you can't do that with a 27.5-foot garage. So on a 65-foot lot, we're going to end up with a 50-foot wide house, and so we'd end up with a 27.5-foot thing. So we'd end up with 2-car garages, which is kind of silly. And then the 7.5, you guys understand that, so I'm not going to even talk about that. It's not a huge deal to us. If we want all right-hand garages, then we can just do that, but it doesn't seem to really suit anybody. So when we talk about the city benefits here, the big gotcha is, hey, there's this huge road we got to build, and it's not even on our site. We don't own any of that property. It goes way past where our site needs to enter. It goes way past where we even abut to. It's all the way down to the county road, and it doesn't seem fair. And we were told this kind of late in the process. We're providing double landscaping. We're doing all this stormwater stuff. He said for what? What is the flexibility we're really getting here? We're just trying to hit your 3 lots per acre. So we got the increased setback, and obviously we're collaborating. We're creating. Sorry, I'll go back here. So we're creating connections here and here for the adjoining development.
Could you go back?
Which one?
Go back. Yeah, benefits. So I just want to make sure that I understand this. So you're building a private trail in the sidewalk system?
Yep.
How's that a benefit to the city?
It's a public trail, and it's connecting to other.
But it's really a benefit for your homeowners, right?
I think we were mostly talking about the one on the very north end. That's
Okay.
It's over a 65-foot high, 65-foot wide lake storm. Is that sewer sector?
There's a
Easement.
65-foot
Easement
easement along
first.
the north side of the property, so the sewer interceptor can cross the property to the major city center area and service the property to the west. So that's a big, but we're also, the private trail will be in the right of way, so it will be a public access, and people will be able to use it, and they'll be able to walk to the view. It'll be connected to the neighboring Bassett crossings and potentially to the project to the east of us.
And-
So
and-
people will use that, and that's the point of having some view stations so people can stop on their walk and then continue. And because it's in the right of way, everyone will have the
Say
right
that,
to use it.
and then we also have that on Maple Hill, right? So there's new sidewalks going on Maple Hill, not on our property. It's all on city property.
Okay, thank you.
So we talked about the road construction here. So this is the gotcha where it's like, okay, you gotta build from here. Our entrance is here. So this is our proposed site, right? So we're supposed to build from here to here, which maybe could be typical. But then also we gotta build down here. By the way, we don't even know where the intersection is gonna go. They say, well, maybe we want you to acquire some more land and we'll move the interchange. And it seemed like a huge project for one developer to take on when all these other properties around here, there's huge landowners here that are gonna benefit. It's obviously gonna connect through to here. This property, these properties down here, there's the Maple Hill Estates, there's the golf course, and it's one developer paying for all of it. It's, truly a public good. We understand we should pay for our roads through our site, like that's typical. We've got houses on it, we're gonna connect it, so you can create a street grid, but to build this huge infrastructure for the city seems a bridge too far to me. Talk about more happy stuff. Hydrological waterway coming through here. So this is to take on water from, I think, all the way over to Shamrock Golf Course, and my civil engineers here to talk about that, so they've done the water studies and all that, and so we got water coming across. Is it through a culvert underneath that? Correct. Yep, so coming through a culvert, going through MI Homes development to the south, and then flowing into our site. So we're grabbing all that water, and we're filtering and retaining it. In addition to our own water. In addition to the water to the east, from the Bergeron Lure parcel, we're putting in a stormwater receptor pipe on our site at our cost to capture their water. We're grabbing water from, across Maple Hill too. So I can show you all that in a map, but, and we're kind of at a disadvantage here because we are the low spot. And you can see the topo map. It's a little hard to read. We're at like 960, see 990s, 980s, 970s. So we're the bathtub where I guess all the water is going. So we're obviously bringing our houses above, floodplain and all that, and creating the swale to manage the water.
Right, and you understand that that's why you're expected to manage that water. It's not that the city's picking on you, it's that I think you called it the bathtub.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're clear here, that you're not saying that the city's picking on you somehow.
Yes.
No,
On the road perspective, yes. From the stormwater, we understand, hey, we bought the low spot, so we gotta deal with it. It makes it harder for us to develop it. That's why we're here talking about a PUD.
Sure.
Because we can't get the density that's required by the city because of these site constraints.
Yeah, I think they're trying to explain the site constraints they're working with, because that's part of the PUD analysis in terms of when we're comparing it to the public benefits proposed, and especially for them, the amount of open space that they're proposing. It's important to consider the constraints that they're also working with, and this is a huge one.
So if you could, why do they have to invest in that road?
Because
I may
they're
have
the trigger. So there was a feasibility study done with our engineers, and basically they're the tipping point. Bass Lake Crossing wasn't quite the tipping point to improve Maple Hill, and now they are. So it's just unfortunate in the alignment that it's all falling on them at this point, but they do need these areas to be improved in order to support the amount of housing they are proposing. But to their argument, it is going to benefit much more than just their development.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so continue on that, the feasibility study did not take into account any connections to the Lure piece. So it says 100% of our traffic is all going on Maple Hill. And I hate to say it, but I don't think everybody's gonna, if you're going downtown Minneapolis and you live in the southeast corner of that site, I don't think you're gonna go backwards. You're probably gonna go through, the Fur Lane way. Let's see. Yeah, and then I think the same thing with the trigger point. Okay, that's fine. Why are we building, this portion? When all of our cars, presumably, unless you're going to the trailer park or the golf course, this is a dead-end street. So why are we required to build this segment? Two, our cars aren't using that. There's no nexus of benefit to our people that would be living in this development.
Would you like me to answer that, Mr. Chair?
Could I?
City policy is that you improve the roadway up to your property line, because then, if they were ever to have a road improvement project tied to development to the west, that they would make the same arguments, and then you'd have patches of area, because, well, that's not our property, we shouldn't have to improve it, or that doesn't quite benefit us. So every project in the city has been, that does road improvements off-site, it's been to the property line.
Okay, thank you.
And then I think I said that the other gotcha is we don't know what the design is yet. It's, hey, pay us some money, we'll design it, we'll send you the bill. We're gonna build the road, we'll send you the bill when that's done. We don't even get to build it with our own contractor. And then you want curb on probably both sides, even though that's a farm field. You want sidewalks on both sides, even though, like I said, we don't own any of it. So, and we're expected to take on this huge task that seems very unfair.
Can I ask the applicant a question? Or
Sure.
do we not?
Well, why don't we wait until discussion? Let's let them finish what they want to share.
I think it's excessive is what we're really saying
Sure.
for our site. And it doesn't necessarily, the feasibility study does not take into account the development to the east that you're looking at tonight. And the fact that that traffic will potentially come, if they're gonna come to the city center and the major center area, they'll likely come through our subdivision and use Maple Hill Road and go to the city center area. If there's activities and there's things going on there, if there's commercial, I don't know. That's what it's designed for and guided with some commercial properties. So, and the intersection that we're being asked to improve is not terribly unusual for, I think MI had to do one and we had to do one at Cook Lake Highlands, but it was adjacent and abutting our property. The difference with this is that it's off-site. It's not adjacent to our property. But because we're building homes and proposing homes, we're being asked to develop that in its entirety. And so it's benefiting the properties that do abut it and are adjacent to it, and the properties that it will benefit, they're private. It's not benefiting the public, it's benefiting private landowners. So, and there is a rental subdivision, 200 units, that currently drives down that road now and uses that road. The road is in not good condition currently.
Sure.
So we understand why they want it to be improved, but we believe that the amount of the improvements is excessive. So we think it can be improved, and we think there's a portion of our responsibility to improve that, but we think fully improving it, urbanizing both the east side and the west side of it is extensive and excessive.
Yeah.
So maybe.
And it's gonna get torn up when that side gets developed.
Yeah, so maybe an urban section on our side and a rural section on the rural side. So
I hear you. It's important to me that you know that you're heard and that, we understand that. We simply make recommendations to city council. So I think this time would be better spent by you elsewhere. We just make recommendations to city council.
We understand the city council person is here.
Right.
we just want for the record.
Oh, I'm sure he's taking notes and hearing everything you have to say.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, we are not taking it out on the planning commission.
Oh,
I
I get it.
yeah.
I
Sorry
hear
for
it.
seeming upset, but it seems.
Yeah, no.
excessive and
I get it. You know what?
designed
Sometimes
to-
things
so
aren't
that's
fair,
fun.
So, well, thank you.
Are you guys also on TikTok? No.
You think I'm on TikTok now? Before you sit down, Commissioner, did you have a question for the
No, I think
applicant?
I'll hold it.
Okay.
I do just have one question, if I could, before you
Please.
sit down. And it's actually just a practical one. So I noted that you have the site divided into a north and a south. And the north is what will be developed first, or that's the plan, right? Or is it the south?
The south.
South, excuse me, yes, I am confused because I was saying it flip-flop, but it's the portion closer to Bass Lake Crossing. And so it's that road, the entrance road, and then will that full connection to Fur Lane be completed when that first phase is done?
I won't connect to Fur Lane, because we don't connect.
You don't connect to Fur Lane. You kind of,
Goes
yes.
to right.
It's because the two are happening at the same time, right? So that connection comes from the adjacent east property.
Ideally, yes.
Okay,
If not, we have been asked to bring it to the property line and do a temporary cul-de-sac.
okay, and I guess my reason for questioning that is that oftentimes when these developments are in the middle of their phasing, we hear from so many residents who talk about construction, entrance, and so making sure that there's more than one way in or out of a development is a big deal to people, even though, they're buying in a new development, but that just tends to come up often. So I wanted to see what the plan was for that. But it looks like that main entrance is going to be both construction access as well as people move in, that will be the in and out to this neighborhood.
That's
It's our
correct.
main end.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's the only one we can count on today.
Okay.
I mean, as a part of this proposal.
Okay,
If that makes sense.
perfect, yep. And that was my only specific question to be answered by you guys.
But yeah,
Appreciate
the
it.
intent is the construction and traffic would come through Maple.
Okay, thank you. Natalie, quick question. If I heard everything, if I heard you earlier correct, we're looking at rezoning to a PUD and then a preliminary PUD plan
And then a preliminary plat, yep.
and the preliminary plat. Okay. How would you like to organize, or I'm sorry.
Public.
Oh, I apologize. Please, come forth and prosper. Please state your name and your address.
My name is Wayne Alberts, I live at 7490 Fur Lane. Just have one question for them, I'm saving the other ones for the council. But one question, who is the developer? I want to know who the developer is. Are you guys the developer? So you own the land now? Are you going to be buying the land? So that's all I want to know is who is the developer, so somebody doesn't.
Sir, you can't
Oh, I-
address any.
I just want to know who, that's all I want to know is who the developer.
Yeah, I don't know if, if you're willing to answer, that's fine. We're not going to ask them to disclose, confidential business information. Right? Is that a question you want to answer or no?
It's in the staff report.
Yes.
It's
Okay.
clear, it's who.
Yeah, the
That's-
applicant
that's-
is them, Trek Real Estate and Hempel doing business as Emerald Rose. So they are acting as the developer. As far as the home builder, I don't believe that's been finalized yet.
Okay, fair? Thank you. All right, so,
Is there anybody?
anyone else? No one? Okay, with that, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
I will second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you. And who would like to begin this discussion? Please.
RSF2, does it have density requirements?
Yes, so anything that, right now, the way that the verbiage is in for RSF2 is it requires 3 to 5 units per acre by code. To change that further to match up with some recent changes to our comp plan, we will be doing a code amendment, but right now it specifically says 3 to 5 units per acre in the RSF2 as well.
And RSF3 is?
3 to 5 units per acre.
RSF2 and RSF3 are the same?
Correct.
Okay. Because I was going to say, I'm trying to understand why we're going against RSF3 versus RSF2 if it is existing RSF2. Because here's my thought. We do have a high level of discretion. Just because we're getting proposals doesn't mean we have to do them. Or at the level of concentration. Because I'm thinking about it this way, and I'm wondering what our density map looks like, given we just approved significant increase in density on the Hope Community Church lot. And what does that look like for the whole composition of Corcoran and what our density goals need to be, given the recent approvals we've had? Those are kind of the questions that are running through my mind that I kind of wanted to talk to the group about. Do we have enough information to make these kinds of long-term decisions?
Mr. Chair, would you like me?
Please.
So this area is guided for low-density residential, so they aren't requesting a comprehensive plan amendment as part of their request. So they are, and our largest land use on our comprehensive plan, like talking thousands of acres, is low-density residential. So while we are going to be able to depart from some of these areas potentially being able to develop lower, it's going to be a limited amount of acreage that we can re-guide, and we cannot deny a project based on that component, saying that we want this to be lower density when it complies with the density in our comprehensive plan. So I would say that part is in compliance with what we currently have planned. I think as part of our comprehensive plan update, we'll be able to better identify areas where less density would make sense. Where there is discretion in this application, I'm not trying to confuse you, the density does comply with where our city ordinance is required. So that's not where they're asking for discretion.
Right, yep, understand that, okay. Those are my questions for now, thanks.
Are we trying to take this, excuse me, Chair, as individual components, or can we address this as a whole?
You know, I guess for this one, use your discretion, however you'd like to go.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. So first of all, I want to say that this is the first time in my recollection, in my couple years here, that we've gotten a PUD proposal with the percentages of deviation, and that was helpful, because I think that sometimes when you are alerted to the fact that there's going to be a deviation, the assumption is that it's on 100% of the properties. And so to call out your specific percentages and then to identify the exact properties that there would be a slight deviation from is extremely helpful in understanding what the overall layout and look of the property is going to be. So I really, really appreciated that. Talking about some of the specific, well, first of all, talking about the road improvement, the one thing that I will say is that I hear you, because I also feel like, but it's part of a larger discussion, and my understanding, as novice as I am in this area, is that it requires actually a larger conversation with our Minnesota legislation. And so I would say that getting back to where we have something similar to like an area transportation fee or some way to distribute this cost would not only benefit multiple folks in your position, but I think it would allow small business owners to have access to developing where they cannot afford to put in the road infrastructure. And so, so I just want to say I hear you. And also appreciate the fact that that is a public benefit, because that is that would be a major public concern, adding any additional cars driving on that road. In particular, at that spot, there's a bend in the road. I know that a gentleman once served on the commission who was also in public safety, and that was a concern of his. So the fact that you are addressing that, I know it isn't a part of your plat, but I do receive that as the massive public benefit that it is for our city. As far as the open space, meeting that 11.3% versus the 12%, I tend to be in favor of giving landowners more land to own. So sometimes I don't understand the open space that doesn't belong really to anyone. So if it were to be up to me, I would say that the 11.3% qualifies as enough open space, even if it is just viewable. It reminds me of a neighborhood in Albertville that sort of has a boardwalk, but really all that you're looking out at is a wetland, but it's quite beautiful. So I would take that as meeting the open space requirement. And then the last, garage facing, I don't have a concern over. I understand the 7 feet, so in terms of the deviations, they make sense to me. I certainly appreciated the comments about the properties that would be affected by the 25 rear setback, 25-foot rear setback, because the fact that most of them can hit that 25-foot setback is notable. So the last thing I had is just for that one tiny property, well, it's not tiny, but the one parcel that belongs to what will kind of have a semblance of a rural residential. What, if any, is there is no requirement for buffering? Because we talked about all the requirements where it butts adjacent land uses, but there is no requirement in and around that property.
No, there is. I forgot to touch on that. They are doing it. I think there's a couple of areas where they might need to clarify on their plans, but I just didn't call it out. But they are that's just as a condition of approval that they make sure that they comply with that standard. So the question that I called out was, how do we want to handle it where it's not quite clear? But that exception piece does need to be buffered.
Okay. Okay, that is, those are the things that I just wanted to address right now.
Thank you.
Yep.
No, the only thought I had was with respect to the open space at 12%. And initially, my thought was, why couldn't you just get to the 12%? But listening to you, I think I'm okay with the way it is. So that was the only thing that I had coming into this meeting.
All right, I've got a couple things. As far as the trail system, I think the open space, to me, open space is really important because yes, you have your property. I have 5 acres. I have lots of open space, but I love the ability to walk on trails and go to different areas and see different things, cross-country ski, walk, bike, and I think that's really important. I think putting the sidewalks on the interior, I think, as what was one of the recommendations here, would be a great idea, and that would eliminate the need for this additional trail that's shown in red on the plan here. I'm a little confused about the, what do you call it again, the hydraulic?
Yeah, hydraulic green corridor.
Wait, you mean the trench?
No, it's not.
I'm teasing. Don't get upset, I'm teasing.
No,
I know.
my question is, and maybe it's not a question, it would be great if there was an ability to put even, you know, a soft surface trail or something through there, but it sounds like it's either too steep or too wet.
Yeah, I think a little
Really
bit of
no
both.
opportunity to put a path through
I think
there?
it's going to be a little too steep the way it's currently designed.
We'd like to clarify that that also does not count as open space right now.
If it had a path, would that qualify?
It's a great question. We actually thought about that. But the comments are that the people feel the privacy and safety of people walking behind the lots is less
I get that.
desirable than providing the view stations and taking the public on the right-of-way walks, connecting them to the other trails where everybody else is walking, and then providing some spots to stop and spend some time there, have a, conversation.
Plus, it could be an area where their dogs eliminate too, so maybe that wouldn't be great.
Yeah, all of that's an issue.
My other question, thanks for answering that. My other question is for the trail that's on the Parks and Trails Commission on the northern part of the property. Is that what's shown here in green?
You know, it's
Trail
So
public?
there's been a few renditions, and I think the staff comments are going to mean that there's another rendition, so I can pull up.
To me, that's very confusing with
Yes.
the potential fence because it looks like the trail is on the south side of the fence.
It is.
Over on the west side of the property.
Based on staff recommendation, it would be.
And then the fence cuts through the trail, and then the trail is on the north side of the fence, on the east side. It's confusing.
Here, let me
Is
try
there
to
a
clarify.
gate
if
in
my
the fence
computer
or
decides
something
to
where you
work.
can continue on the
That's
trail?
not your site plan, is it?
That's my background. All right, but let's see here. It doesn't want to work for me.
I think what really changed it was that we were allowed to potentially go through the wetland. So we don't have to move the end of the trail so much, and we can keep it along the 65-foot easement that's there in open space.
Okay,
And
so,
then-
and I like that. I think it's better than just kind of going in a straight line anyways.
Yeah.
I'm just confused with the fencing option, and I would prefer to, as I think there was a recommendation to have that as a natural screen, trees or whatever, instead of a fence.
We probably prefer to have both, maybe a combination of fencing and.
Because it's a real high-density neighborhood to the north?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the trail their most recent plans show the trail coming around here, around the wetland, and then looping back up here, and then through a stormwater pond and a wetland, but it's within the wetland buffer. So we're
Gotta go
going to,
around
so
44.
after staff review, it's more likely it's gonna have to come down here, before connecting east.
Okay, and then it goes on to the next property?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, yeah, just some clarification, but that'd be preferable. I like that. I like the internal trail. I like the views of the wetland area. I think all that's really nice. I sympathize with the whole road thing. It's too bad you can't get the neighboring property to kick in some on that. The 60% garage frontage, looking at the plans for the homes, I think they don't look like they're stub homes, is that what they call them?
Snout houses?
Snout houses. Yeah, I think because of the second level and the windows up top, and they have enough, you know, housing on the main level that even the 3-car garage, it looks okay. And I appreciate like the hardy siding and, you know, the really good materials that you're putting in, different color choices, I do believe, too.
I think that one might be Fairway Shores, but they are, I don't know exactly, I don't know what building materials you're proposing.
I don't think that
We don't think they've been identified.
I just did the color palette and the anti-monotonous.
Yeah.
The anti-monotonous is really appreciated. There's so many gray neighborhoods out there.
Right.
I mean, I like a gray home, but a whole neighborhood, it gets to be a bit much. I guess my first impression on the discretionary standards, I don't know, you guys have probably already gone above and beyond, especially if you have to do this roadway and the trails and everything. So an HOA is going to be maintaining the outlots. Off the yard ordinance, setbacks, I think that looks okay. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers my input. Yeah.
Yes.
And apologies, I know this is a little less relevant, specific to the specific development proposal. But I'm trying to understand how we are factoring changing density as we approve developments.
I'm keeping track of it. I have an updated table. The problem is we can't really count our eggs before they're hatched. Everything's preliminary right now. So we kind of have to take everything in a bucket. But right now we're about 3.10 or so in terms of the units per acre with what's been approved. And I think Fairway Shores will bring it down to about 3.9 in the table. So we still have a little bit of room to re-guide some land, but we're talking about potentially 500 acres of land within the low density area. So we're not even talking about an area that is currently guided as medium density. If they were to want to switch to the conservation residential district at 2 to 3, that would have a much bigger impact. So there's limited what we're going to be able to re-guide to that area under our current data. So the 2050 plan will be our chance to kind of reset everything and really try to take a more proactive look at re-guiding some land.
Because that makes, like, okay, that was very, very helpful, and I think perhaps, because I'm like, we're approving these things all the time, and we say, we'll approve this one, so we can have less development over here. We're developing everything, so I don't understand how we're.
I am keeping track of it, and
Okay.
we will be, once we have final plat data, that will help inform our 2050 plan.
Okay. I also love the greenway, the corridor, very cool. And the fencing, I understand it. I had another question on timing. So would Fairway and would you guys work together to make the disruption perhaps less to the neighboring communities or somehow? Or maybe that's a discussion for later, but you know, I just think that could be a really big disruption if they're going on at the same time. And I wonder what that means.
I'm just gonna say it only makes sense to try to do that, right, for everybody, so.
Oh, to do them at the same time.
Yeah.
So that instead of it
So it's more coordinated.
For so many reasons,
Yeah.
I mean, we're taking on some of their stormwater and we're supposed to having a shared stormwater, rear stormwater along the east property line, but we're showing it on our side because we don't know what's gonna happen, right, to their site. So if they, you know, yeah, grades, and it makes the most sense to try to collaborate.
Okay. And so I know the other proposal, I believe, is villas targeting a bit of a retired community. You know, you guys mentioned 3-car garages. That makes me think this is not that clientele at all, so likely not competing.
Well, there is some of that. There's gonna,
Oh.
this particular area, because of where the Rockford schools are, lends itself to a senior, or an older, buyer. But we don't know that for sure, and there are a lot of seniors that want 3-car garages. You would be amazed.
Oh, that is surprising to me.
Because of storage.
Oh.
So that
Because you have to have 3 or 4 trash cans in one garage.
Right? That's surprising to me too. But
Yeah, the
that is
third,
what we've
the
been
third
hearing.
garage is the first shed for all the.
It's where they're bullet.
Yeah, I don't have that, so I don't know.
Okay, and